There was another church I was working with. For over 20 years, they've declined every single year. All the young people have left. They've missed budget, I think, 22 years in a row. And so they hired a young pastor who did love Jesus, and he started making changes, and so they attacked him and fired him. Because new people were coming. And that changed things, because now the way they did life together was different. Service time changed, music changes, somebody painted a wall. We need to fire the pastor. And they did. He's a very godly man. And let me tell you this, every living thing changes. This isn't going to change much. It's the same as it was basically 2,000 years ago. It's because it's dead. Dead things don't change. Living things change. I've got a 5-year-old son. In 5 years, he's going to change. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. In 7 years, she's going to change. Anything that's alive changes. It either grows or dies. So the question is not for churches, will there be change? The question is, will the change be for life or death? Will it be for forward progress or for sinful rebellion? There's going to be change. And so I would just ask you, I know that you're scattered from many churches, and even for those who call Mars Hill home, is your first inclination to resist change? Is your first inclination to argue for tradition? Is your first inclination to keep things that are familiar to you, comfortable to you, or to rejoice that there's a new opportunity for new people to meet Jesus, and so change is a good thing? Otherwise, we really don't have this attitude of parents. And for those of you who are parents, would you agree that having a child forces change? What changes when you have children? Everything. Your schedule, your budget, your health, your sleep. But you welcome that change because there's new life, and so you're willing to be inconvenienced. As Christians, we want to welcome new birth, babies, and new birth spiritually, Christian converts, and then we welcome them into church, and what that requires is change. Things have to change. And if we're dead, we fight the change. And if Jesus is alive, we embrace the change. And Jesus' word to the church here was, you're dead. You are not changing, but that's because you're dead. A couple other things in closing, and I know it's hot and I appreciate your time. I'll say this too. What happens is it goes from a movement to an organization, to an institution, to a museum. This is what denominations do. This is what churches do. So God, the Holy Spirit works. There's a movement. Then you've got to organize it. So there's an organism. You start a church or a missions agency or a denomination. And then what it becomes is an institution. An institution is not about the future. It's about the past. It's not about pushing forward. It's about defending what we've already obtained. And they start talking about the good old days and the glory days. And do you remember when? Well, then step number 4, it becomes a museum. There's not a future, there's not a mission, there's not a passion, there's not a life. We just talk about what used to happen. And this is a hard word, but I think it's a good word. As we go back to our homes, as we go back to our churches, as we go back to our ministries and lives, we've got to ask ourselves, do I want to be part of a movement or a museum? Do I want to be part of something that is growing and changing, or something that has already died and is just telling the stories of what God used to do a long time ago? And as we go to these sites and we look around, it's beautiful, it's interesting, it's historical, it's magnificent, but it's all museum. And Christianity is about learning from the museums, but it's about being part of a movement and staying on the mission of God of seeing disciples made and churches planted.